Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Ty. Here, how about this?
Nothing.
Oh, no.
I mean, that's the amount of interesting things I have to say about this because it's very simple.
At any point while you were watching Oregon lose 56-22 to Indiana, at any point did you wish that you had extended your Pee Wee basketball practice to about 5 hours tonight so that you didn't have to witness that massacre?
I think I would have rather watched this game 3 times than extended that practice.
Okay, we can get into
any
that
longer
if we want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a lot to unpack here. Hello, welcome back. I'm Ty. He is Dan. This is a Solid Verbal. Please hit follow. Please hit subscribe. Help support the team. We saw one college football playoff semifinal on Thursday night. That one between Miami and Ole Miss. That was a barn burner. The one that we had tonight, Friday, January the 9th, was very much not. And it was very much not right from the jump. When Indiana scored on a pick six on literally the first play of the game, D'Angelo Pons picks one off, runs it back for a 25-yard touchdown to get Indiana off the schneid right away, 7-0. It did not get any better from there. Again, your final score, 56-22, a fully dominant showing by the number one Indiana Hoosiers. Fernando Mendoza, 5 touchdown passes, for the most part unstoppable. The Indiana defense, I was just looking, 10 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Every part of this Indiana machine right now is operating at optimum efficiency, which is a real scary sight, especially if you are the Miami Hurricanes. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later on here in this recording, Dan, but I have to play it. I'm sorry.
Guess who just got
you're good.
murdered?
This was obviously a very, very dominant showing by the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm not going to sit here and dunk on Oregon. I will maybe a little bit later.
You can.
For starters, no. For starters, we got to give credit where it's due. I'm going to kick it over to you because you are the Oregon alum among us. What were your thoughts watching this massacre?
Nothing. I mean, it was at a certain point, it just went to nothing. At a certain point, I just had glazed eyes staring at the TV, but really through the TV into the emptiness that can be the feelings of life sometimes. What were my feelings? Look, you open a game throwing a pick six. It was a bad pass. It was a great jump by D'Angelo Pons. It was a great play. And you spot an excellent team like Indiana very clearly is, 7 points. That's not great. You spot them turnover after turnover, and with the fumbles, with the general offensive issues after that first drive that Oregon did have, they jumped back onto the scoreboard and made it 7-all with a nice drive. There's no excuse. There's nothing like for Oregon. This is what was going through my mind. You're asking me what's going through my mind. If Will Stein were coming back next year and Tosh Lupoy were coming back next year, this would have been an ass kicking. If Jordan Davison were in there, if Noah Whittington and Jaden Lamar were in there, this would have been an ass kicking. If Dante Moore had declared that, no, I'm coming back next year, I'm so excited to play with my guys, blah, 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 and erased any of the doubt there, this would have been an ass kicking. I don't know, if the portal were opening in a month instead of opening last week, this would have been an ass kicking. I think you're sensing a theme here that Oregon was not prepared for this game. Oregon made mistakes in a way that a far less than Indiana team makes, and Oregon is far less. I mean, the conversation, at least at some points in the week leading up to this game, was it's tough to beat a strong team twice.
Sure.
Maybe that's true. Oregon did not look strong in this game. They did not look like a strong team, let alone a strong team against Indiana. The flip side of that would be like, it's tough to look this strong against. It's tough to only lose by 10 against Indiana twice.
Right.
That you could just sense something from Indiana that they are ready for every moment, right? Every 3rd and 3 is just like, yeah, of course we're going to convert this into a first down.
Right.
Of course, a receiver is going to break 3 yards past the sticks. Of course, even if that receiver is covered, that they're going to block it up and Fernando Mendoza is just going to buy himself time and scramble for a first down. And even when Oregon, as they're being slaughtered, is, converting some bigger plays and driving down the field, D.R. Hill had a 70-yard run. There was just like the Indiana played the next play like it was the most important play of their lives. And they played every play like it was the most important play of their lives. And I just think that this Indiana offense and defense were perfectly formed and curated for this talent. The talent is coached super well. It was evaluated super well. There's no shortage of pieces you can read about Kurt Cignetti's evaluation process and development process with his
production over potential. They said it
production
1,000 times in the broadcast, but they got a lot of production in this one, at least.
Oregon can be an excellent team against a lot of teams. Indiana has their number, has their letter, has their punctuation, has every single piece of the Oregon Bible, whatever it is you want to call it. Indiana was way better in October. They were way better today, and they will continue to be way better until proven otherwise. And frankly, Ty, I'm pretty sick of ending every season like this shit. I'm pretty sick of it. It's a good run. Oregon won the Big Ten last year. Oregon had a nice season this year, but not being ready for this moment. And look, there was a lot stacked up against them, but once again, even if there weren't, it would have been an ass kicking. Oregon was just not ready to compete on this level. Now, we can have a separate conversation about where this Indiana team stacks up in modern history, perhaps if they win the national championship, whatever, because there's a worthwhile conversation to be had there.
Dude, it's when they win the national championship that they play like this. These last two games,
right,
against two, I mean, listen, we could argue whether or not Alabama should have been in the playoff, but
yeah,
Alabama was not a bad team by any stretch. They might have been team number 13 instead of team number 12, but they were very much in the hunt for a good reason. They got smoked. Oregon, unanimously a top 5 team, they got smoked. To come out and be this dominant against two really quality teams, that's just hard to do. So no disrespect to Miami. It's a cool story. They get this game at home. They are obviously playing with much purpose to their own credit. But if we see this version of Indiana again, Miami's not going to be within 21 points of them. They're just not.
Right. I'm with you. Look, there's a reason you still got to play the game. You still, weird stuff happens. It's a strange sport. But the manner in which Miami is winning, which is impressive, all things considered, their growth under Mario Cristobal, very impressive. I say that with zero snark or sarcasm. The manner in which Indiana is winning when they're locked in is just on a different level than everybody in this moment. That they were able to do. Their last 3 games were dominating at least one side of the ball, if not both sides of the ball, against Ohio State, Alabama, and Oregon.
Yeah.
These are deeply talented teams. Motivated perhaps to different extents. Obviously, Ohio State dealing with a lot of new players. I guess all 3 of these teams dealing with somewhat, a new roster in a lot of places. But so is Indiana, right? Like there isn't an actual excuse that holds water beyond they're a lot better than we are. And I don't know how, I don't want to belabor the point because it's kind of simple at this moment. That Indiana is just way better. Their players perform at a higher level. Their coaches perform at a higher level. It's tough to find solace in anything, even though, once again, it was a really successful year for Oregon. Oregon was better than 133 teams, 134 teams minimum. They might be the second best team in this sport. And the second best team in the sport just lost by, do the quick math for me, 34 points?
That is correct.
They might be number 2. We'll see what happens with Miami. But maybe they're probably number 3. Right? Is Oregon going to finish number 3?
They might. Listen. I don't even know if it's a black eye to lose to Indiana. I think if you're an Oregon fan, and I'm not, and you can obviously speak much more to that point, obviously you're disappointed that you lost, but losing isn't the worst part. The worst part is that you lost in this capacity in a way that didn't even feel like it was close. I mean, part of the early storyline, at least in the first half, was 3 first-half turnovers that led to 21 Indiana points. Later on in the game, there was a block punt that ended up giving Indiana 28 points off of Oregon mistakes in some way, shape, or form. If you subtract those 28 points, Indiana still wins this game by 6 points, okay? That's how
Sure.
far and away better they were in this game. Did it change momentum? Did it change the tenor of the game? Did it alter Oregon's game plan? I think it had to. I don't think there's any way around that. But this was just a fully dominant showing, no matter how you slice it. 11 of 14 on third downs for Indiana. Oregon, to their credit, was fine on third downs as well, 8 of 13. But 11 of 14, I think, is a pretty symbolic way of talking about how Indiana just felt unstoppable when they had the football. You know, whether you're looking at Fernando Mendoza going 17 of 20 for the 5 touchdowns, whether you're looking at them having no turnovers, not creating, creating Oregon mistakes, but not having any of their own, whether you're looking at that third down number, everything about this felt very inevitable, both in the moment and now after the fact. You look at the stat line. I'll even go back to before they kicked the game off. It was like 95% Indiana fans there. If you looked out in the crowd, it was pretty much a sea of red. So everything about this moment felt like it was coming up Indiana. And in the end, again, 56-22 was your final score.
And by the way, that's cool that it's 95% Indiana. It could have been 95% Bengal Tigers in the crowd.
They could have played that game on the moon. It wouldn't have mattered.
They could have played that game in Assembly Hall on a basketball court in Bloomington, Indiana. I think that's what it's called. I know that this is in Illinois. They could have played that game in Bloomington at a high school. They could have played that game in front of standing room only in the Tokyo Dome full of Indiana fans. They could have played that game in Eugene, Oregon again. They could have played that game
it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered.
Switzerland. It doesn't matter. Like, as cool as it is, though, the 95% of the crowd being Indiana fans did nothing for this game.
No.
It's just cool that so many people got to see Indiana perform in a spot like this that wanted it to happen. But no, it had no bearing on the outcome of this game.
So there, of course, is the layer of Indiana just being unstoppable, a buzzsaw, a wagon, inevitable, whatever way you choose to represent what we're seeing from the Indiana Hoosiers. They're still the only undefeated team in the country, and they are going to the national championship. From their standpoint, it would be the very first national championship that they have won in football. Obviously, Miami has won many before, but it's been about 25 years. So we're going to have two relatively new-ish teams playing for a national championship, which I think is cool. It makes for a cool story when they meet on January the 19th, which is a week from this coming Monday. The other layer to this is, again, this continued arc of Indiana football, going from the perennial doormat to now this unstoppable force in college football. And I saw our friend Ben Jones, who obviously writes about Penn State. He had a great tweet earlier tonight. Indiana's season is just an existentially exhausting thing for a place like Penn State. And I would add to many other places like Penn State, Dan.
Yeah.
Spent a decade treading water. Indiana cuts the line with half the effort and toil, and now here they are, right? Whether you're Oregon, whether you're Penn State, whether you're any number of the teams around college football who have been nose to the grindstone for years, trying to build up a program, trying to get to this point, trying to get to this moment where you can perhaps get into a national championship, to have Indiana swoop in just 2 years with the combination of the right coaching staff and the right players via the portal, and maybe a little bit of luck here and there, even though there wasn't a whole lot that they needed in this one.
Right.
But for them to now just sort of cut to the front of the line and be in this moment, it's the kind of thing that I think is going to have a lot of athletic directors and a lot of coaches around the sport looking in the mirror, wondering, how did they do this? It still kind of feels like a magic trick. I know we have Indiana fans who listen to this or who have found this over the last couple months as Indiana has gone on this incredible run. I think many of them would say the same thing. They knew the team would be better this year. When we did our preview, we knew the team would be better this year. That was never really a question. It was a matter of, to what degree do we have confidence that even getting a little bit better is going to catapult them to new heights? Nobody could have guessed that they would be in this position that they're in right now. But I would say at a minimum, if you are one of those programs around college football that aspires to be here, to look at the plight of Indiana and Kurt Cignetti in a very short period of time, it's a big old shrug. It still feels like a magic trick, and I know the people that listen to this show who root for Indiana, Many of them have written in. They feel the same. They just like literally nobody saw this coming, maybe outside of Kurt Signetti.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know what there is to add. They do every little thing well. That's a well-coached team. And even when fumbles appear to just have magnets for their own hands, right? Fernando Mendoza has 2 fumbles. One bounces to, was it Coogan? Pat Coogan?
Right.
And the other one he recovers early on in the game. They're just automatic in every moment, right? The receivers don't drop anything. They don't drop a single contested catch ever. I think that last time they lost a fumble was like the 18th play of the season. They noted against was that ODU was their opening round matchup.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredible to behold on this level. It's been incredible to behold. I guess good for Ohio State for keeping it as close as they did. And
Good for Ohio State
opportunity.
If I could bring something up here
Yeah.
that kind of caught me off guard, but then I've been sitting with it since they mentioned it on the broadcast. And the more I think about it, the more it feels like a very apt comparison. If you watch this game at all, they were drawing comparisons first and foremost between Fernando Mendoza and the great Joe Burrow year, of 2019, whenever it was at LSU.
Right.
And you can see the comparison. I understand why you would draw that, but more broadly, they were talking about this Indiana team and comparing it to the run that LSU went on in that year. I don't know if LSU quite had the same defense that we're seeing from Indiana. I know they didn't. But certainly there was this feeling of everyone is standing on the tracks and the train's coming through, and it's LSU. And when I first heard that comparison, I must admit, I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. Because I tend to think of that 2019 LSU team as one of the greatest I have seen.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly in our time doing this show, in all my time watching and rooting for college football. But the more I see Indiana in spots like this, obviously there's a big one left to go. It sort of fits, Dan. It sort of fits. And I never thought I would say that because that was one of the greatest single seasons that I think I will ever see, that we will ever see. But the pure inevitability of this Indiana team, how they do not make mistakes, they do not give you any mulligans. Fernando Mendoza, it feels like a friggin' robot back there. There is nothing you could throw at him or this line that is going to confuse these guys.
No.
They are a machine in the same way as that LSU team. And that is damn freaking scary if you're a Miami Hurricane fan right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, to play devil's advocate, obviously LSU had an easier road in the SEC to put up those stats, right? Like we're just talking about a conference that can't compete on a high level.
All right, settle.
No, it's okay. No, I'm just saying what we're all thinking. Continue.
Clearly, that LSU team had a bunch of first-round picks on it.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It was an unbelievable assembly of talent.
Yeah.
I don't think this Indiana team is going to have that many first-round picks. It doesn't matter, though, right? It's not about the NFL and the first-round picks thing. That's a component to it. But the level of domination that I think we have seen is where I am drawing that comparison. And, I don't know. People can weigh in if they think it's a bad way to compare what Indiana is doing so far this season. It wasn't even my idea. They mentioned it on the broadcast. But if this is intended to be an instant reaction show where we kind of give our knee-jerk thoughts here, I have been sitting with that since they mentioned it. And I'm going to be thinking about it for the next 10 days.
Sure. LSU's net points per drive in 2019 was 2.43, so offensive points per drive minus defensive points per drive allowed. This year's Indiana going into this game is slightly ahead of them at 2.49, and that's before tonight's game, which I think will add to the discrepancy.
One would think, yeah.
So, look, LSU was in a 4-team playoff era. This is a 12-team playoff era. LSU needed to win 2 games. Indiana's going to need to win, by my count, how many, Ty? 3 games?
Yeah,
4 games?
3 games. Yeah.
They're going to have to win 4 games.
The other side of it, too, is just it was a different era back then, right? You couldn't use the transfer portal to the extent that Indiana has used it now. And another thing that I think they were wise to bring up on the broadcast was one of the things that teams are dealing with in light of all this portal movement is it's really tough to build depth the way some of those older teams could.
Totally.
Those
It is.
LSU teams stacked talent on top of talent on top of talent. They were 3 deep at every key position. Indiana said they're playing 13 guys on defense. It is not the deepest team. I think depth across college football has taken a hit for obvious reasons. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but there's definitely a conversation to be had there. Let me ask you this, though, okay?
Yeah. By the way, just to clarify, to fully fact check the 2019 LSU thing, Joe Burrow was a transfer.
He was a transfer.
To
He
LSU.
was a transfer.
So
He
they
was a
did
transfer.
take advantage of the ability for a quarterback to transfer.
Fair enough. That is
Ohio
fair enough.
State felt like he was not just, high enough level. That was an Urban Meyer thing. Continue.
I am going to circle back to Oregon at some point because you mentioned something that I want to unpack a little bit more. But for the time being, I do want to at least talk about this matchup that we have coming up between Indiana and Miami.
Sure.
Again, this game is going to take place on January the 19th. They're going to play this game in Hard Rock Stadium, which is an interesting story unto itself. Not just because it's going to be in Miami's home stadium, it's also Fernando Mendoza's hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up a very short ways away from the University of Miami. At time of recording, again, we're doing this in the immediate aftermath of this dominant win by Indiana. Indiana enters that game as about a 7.5 point favorite. So just in thinking ahead, we have not had the opportunity to go in and do the deep dive and look at the numbers and the matchups and the zone schemes and whatever else we look at when we put our predictions together.
Yeah.
But about 10 days out, thinking of that matchup, 7.5 points in favor of Indiana. How does that make you feel?
Good about Indiana? I mean, what can I, unless I'm going to convince myself in the next week that Oregon was the biggest paper tiger that I just never fully saw coming, and same goes for Alabama. I'm not sure what Miami offers that is wholly convincing that would have me believe that they are going to be able to hang with this team. If we're going to buy Indiana as excellent and bulletproof and worthy of at least a conversation about the greatest recent performances from a team overall, I don't think we just have that conversation about Miami. And it feels like I'm disrespecting the Canes, and that's fine if you feel that way. But Miami can merely be really, really good and super impressive and a strong team and a worthy team to be in this spot. But also, I come back to what we've talked about in previewing some of these games, and we probably should have before this Indiana-Oregon game. If there is a blowout in this national championship game, is there a universe in which Miami's winning this game 38-10?
No.
I don't believe that to be the case.
No.
And so usually that's a good indicator going into a big game. Now, big games can go either way, of course. But if there is a blowout, is it 70% of the time going to be this team? 93% of the time going to be this? Like, I just don't see a universe in which Miami makes work of Indiana. And so I just don't think they're crisp enough. Because you have to be that crisp against this year's Indiana team. You have to be playing such clean, what did I say, eat off the floor football?
No.
Oregon did not play eat off the floor football.
No.
Put me down for that analysis.
Right.
They did not play eat off the floor clean football against Indiana. And so I just am not a believer in Miami, especially given whatever their injuries look like on defense heading into this game and down a starting corner for the first half because of a targeting call. I just don't think that Miami can get away with being Miami against Indiana. The penalties, right? Like,
yeah, the penalties, the penalties I think is something that we'll need to discuss when we do the official preview. But I'm curious to see what kind of pressure Corey Heatherman dials up.
Yeah.
What they try to do to neutralize Fernando Mendoza, if you can. I mean, no one's really been able to do it all that well this year, but I think that's an interesting angle to unpack. We've clearly talked enough about the Miami pass rush. For folks listening and watching to this, you know where we stand. It's obviously very good. It didn't really come into play against Ole Miss. Ole Miss did a good job mitigating that, but you can expect that they're going to try to bring the house or at least do something to get Fernando Mendoza out of rhythm. He didn't look out of rhythm at all in this game. And when he did, he ran
Right.
for, 28 yards, had that big 21-yarder at one point earlier in the game. So I'm curious to see that side of it. I'm curious to see if Miami continues to lean on their ground attack. I really like the Miami offensive line. I still think they could get a little bit of push, enough of a push up front against this Indiana defensive front that they can make some hay on the ground. But it's a matter of what can they do beyond that. What is it going to look like beyond that? Even in the game that we saw on Thursday against Ole Miss, there were a few of those throws that tight window throws for Carson Beck. Let's say that it could have easily gone in the other direction. So
but there were at least 4 the other way.
There were at least 4 the other way, and that ultimately I think is what sank Ole Miss. But I'm curious to see what the second pitch is for Miami. We know they've got Malachi Tony. We know they got playmakers out wide, and they're very, very good along the trenches as well. But for me, the two things I think I'm most curious about are Miami's pass rush, how they bring pressure on Mendoza, and then what their offense looks like if they are able to get a push up front. And I'll just say, speaking from experience, we have done this now since 2008. Generally, when all your questions are on one side of the matchup, that's not good for that team.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't win, but I would say more often than not, at least in the games that I've picked, it tends to go the other direction. So right now, I would have a heavy lean on the Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's also still amazing that Indiana's accomplishing this, not just the time thing, but they're like bringing in next year's team right now. They're recruiting next year's team. Like, we have to imagine that, well, like Josh Hoover is going to be next year's like murderous cyborg at quarterback. Like, they did this to like an 85% level with Ohio's quarterback, with Curtis Rourke,
who was hurt.
Who hurt his thumb and came into the season hurt. He had a knee injury. And so, I don't know. Is it going to last forever? Probably not. But will they be a sort of death machine to an impressive extent for the time being? I think so. Yeah. Like, until proven otherwise, I don't know how you discount what has happened so far. They're gonna keep doing it like this. They're gonna keep attacking the portal. They'll develop younger players as well to complement the whole thing. But no, it's all incredible, and it's a unicorn. It's one of those things too where you're just like, how do you replicate Kurt Cignetti? You don't. How do you approximate Kurt Cignetti? You don't. And I think it's foolish to say, like, who is that next guy? Who is that next small school coach? Who is that next disciple of some sort of legendary coach that can bring that line of thinking and that line of attention to detail to our team? It's the wrong way of thinking about it. Just hire the best guy you possibly can and hope for the best, because thinking of like how to make our own version of this, I think, is just so futile, and I think it's going to get people fired. But
no,
I don't know. It's crazy to behold.
Your final score again is 56-22. The Indiana Hoosiers stay unbeaten. Again, the only undefeated team still in college football. They are going down to Hard Rock Stadium to square off against the Miami Hurricanes. That game is on January the 19th. We, of course, will preview that over the next week or so. Our next episode, the one coming up on Sunday, is going to be transfer portal episode with the friend Max Olson. I got to go through and edit it because we recorded it on Thursday, and there's been some movement in the transfer portal since then. So we're going to give that nice little power cleaning to make sure that the stuff that people are listening to isn't going to be wildly out of date and is still relevant and interesting and worthwhile of your subscription or your follow on your podcasting app of choice.
Yes.
I did want to close this out, though, by giving you one final bite at the Oregon apple.
Okay. You want me to do a postseason recap?
Well, you said something that is sticking with me, and that is you're tired of seasons ending like this.
Yeah.
And my suspicion is there are probably people tuning in right now who want me to dunk on you or want to hear the pain in your voice after your beloved Oregon Ducks lost by 34 in the national semifinal.
I didn't play, to be clear. I didn't call these plays. I didn't recruit these players, but yeah.
But my hunch is that even if you're not tuning in for that, regardless of who you root for, you have been in this situation where the season ends on a really embarrassing or otherwise disappointing note.
Mm-hmm.
And so your words of wisdom in this moment probably go a lot further than you're willing to admit.
Okay.
I want to,
As I speak to Oregon fans or any fans of a team ending the season in a deflating, disheartening way.
I want you to get it all out, because when I messaged you in the second quarter, you said you were thinking, first off, you were drinking. And secondly, you were thinking of wandering into the deep, dark abyss that is Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
So with that as the precursor,
Mm-hmm.
let's hear it.
Well, okay.
Let's hear the rant.
So the rant is basically when you spend 10 days or so, however many days it's been since the Texas Tech game, thinking about this game, previewing this game, going on other shows talking about this game, thinking about different ways this game could go. And in my case, hoping for the best for Oregon. We're like, well, they have to play clean. You know, Dante's going to have to get more comfortable with the Indiana pass rush. And then like the running back situation happens where they're losing guys. And you're like, well, you know, they still have De'Aaron Hill. Jay Harris can be pretty good. It's a good offensive line in front of him. Will Stein has called a really good offense these past 3 years for Oregon. You know, these receivers are healthy with Malik Benson and Jeremiah McClellan sort of breaking through in the back third of the season, something like that. And, you know, Jamari Johnson at tight end is a big second tight end option. And then the defense pitching a shutout against Texas Tech, a team we all agreed was like a top 4 or 5 team. And you say to yourself, like, they could probably put together 60 really strong minutes and put themselves in a position to at least compete to win this game and stay in this game and maybe catch a break or two, a turnover, something like that. And you sort of talk yourself into the ability to compete in an improved way against a team that you fell short against. And when the game starts and it's an immediate pick six. And
it was like, in our Discord, it was like, oh no, here we go. This is not going to end well.
Where you're just like, they immediately, or Dante Moore was immediate, or what, or the receiver, the whatever, the moment was immediately too big for Oregon, and mistakes happen. And Oregon actually, they marched down the field and, you know, convert a bunch of third downs and, you know, get in the end zone. And
they rebounded well. They went 3 for 3 on third downs on that next drive. They put, it was like a 14 play drive or something like that ate about 7.5 minutes off the clock, went 75 yards. So you didn't notice any hints of panic, right? They showed the clip of Will Stein on the sidelines. He seemed completely unfazed. Dante looked good. Yeah, they did answer the moment, at least that one moment after the pick six.
Yeah, it's tough because watching this year's Oregon team against the best teams that they played on this schedule, to whatever extent, right? Indiana obviously being the best that they played twice. They didn't put together like, oh, they just beat that team 35-13, and that's a really good team. Like, they just didn't put together complete games against good teams. And some of it was weather, some of it was whatever circumstance. But that was the thing that I wish I had paid more attention to. But in hindsight, it's just like Oregon's number 3-4 team in the country. It's pretty good. They lost to a team this season. One team is the only team they lost to, is the team. They didn't end up losing to a losable Iowa game team, whatever. It was sloppy at times against teams like Washington and USC, whatever.
Could have lost to Penn State on the road at night.
Absolutely. Almost gave that game away to Penn State. They almost gave away that lead and pulled it out in double overtime. But there is something in this moment. And I thought about this last year against Ohio State, where I was just like, they need like a 62-year-old grizzled coach on defense who is just like they needed, not Jim Knowles, but they needed somebody like of Kurt Signetti's generation. Not Kurt Signetti. There's only one of those to go around. But like, I think about like the coaches all being on the younger side, and, you know, the recruiting has been great. The portaling has been great. And there's just like, even Dan Lanning himself, every year he's gotten better, right? Wins 10 games his first year, including the bowl win. And then, you know, goes to the Fiesta Bowl, and then goes to the Rose Bowl and loses to Ohio State. Like, every year he's stacking. He wins the Big Ten. He makes it to the Final Four. Like, every year is a growth year for Dan Lanning's career. But at the end of these last couple, you're just like, he's not James Franklin. He's above that level. He's won big games, beat Ohio State and Eugene or whatever. But like when it comes to this moment, what is that last thing that's completely lacking for this
Right.
Oregon team?
He's the Kirby Smart of James Franklin's.
He's the Kirby Smart of James Franklin's. Sure. Where you're just like, defenses can be really, really good, has a ton of talented players, portaled seemingly well with guys like Dylan Thieneman and Bear Alexander who performed. And then on offense, like you got Dante Moore be a top 5 pick in the draft whenever it is that he goes. There's talent everywhere. And you're just like, it makes me think about the best players versus the right players. And when you have the best right players, you get something special. I think Oregon is finding a lot of really, really good high-level players that you could say are like the best players at their position in like this draft class or in a recruiting class or in a portal class. But it's a team game. And at a certain point, you're just like, what are we trying to do? How do we find the best possible players for what we're trying to do? And are we doing as good a job at finding them, developing them, and unleashing them into the universe in these huge moments? Again, they're a top 4 team.
Sure.
So you're talking about an extremely slim margin. But when you're a top 4 team and you lose number 1 by 34,
right,
the margin feels a lot wider. And so that to me is just like, I live an advantage lifestyle rooting for this program. But you're just like, man, can they cut it any closer in moments like these? I don't know. It's first world problems, of course, or 1% of the 1% problems. But I'm just telling you, as somebody who went to the school, who cares deeply about this football team winning, you hope to close the gap in a moment like this. And again, the pick six, Dante Moore's hand hitting Dier Hill on an RPO and, causing that fumble, man, on one hand, maybe it'll feel so much sweeter given that I'm going through this, if it ever happens for Oregon. The nectar will be so delectable. But I don't know, man. It's not going to be a fun sleep tonight, if that makes sense. I don't know. Does any of that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think it only underscores the point that I mentioned earlier from our friend Ben Jones.
Yeah.
How Indiana getting the right guy who knows how to go out and get the right players for his scheme. It feels like you always say alignment. This is alignment in all caps, from top to bottom. Everybody has bought in. They play outstanding team football. They do not beat themselves. It is not necessarily about getting the top of the top in terms of name brand talent. It's about getting the guys who produce and the guys who go out there and can be part of a larger thing.
Yeah.
And that's not to say Oregon or anybody else doesn't do that, but Indiana right now is doing it way better. And so there is that side of it that I think has left a lot of college football puzzled, even Indiana fans puzzled as to how he is doing this so quickly. The other thought that came to mind just with, again, I keep using the word inevitability, but that's just how I feel watching the Indiana Hoosiers. If you were to tell me 10 years from now that Connor Stallions is secretly working for Indiana and picking off plays for opponents, I think I would believe that. That's how prepared Indiana seems. I'm not saying they're cheating, but
right.
They feel so prepared and so ready for everything. Case in point, what is it? 4th and 1, 4th and 2, maybe a dumb play call, but the fullback dive fake pitch toss out to Jay Harris that Oregon tried earlier in the game. That was one of the 10 tackles for loss that Indiana had in this game. They talked about how Oregon has shown that look many times over, that fullback dive. They ran that little pitch play. Indiana was there. Indiana knew it was coming. It looked like you watched the above you from the spider cam and everybody just crashed the right side of that line. They're so well prepared that it feels like they know what's coming. And that's a whole other side of it. That's not even about getting the right guys. That's about preparing in a way.
Yeah, but that's not listening on the radio. That's actually just watching the tape of what Oregon does.
I get it. I'm just saying they're so well prepared that is also an added layer to this, that despite the fact that they're doing it with a lot of transfers and a coaching staff that clearly deserves to be compensated for the job they're doing, their ability and the players' ability to stay this locked in and prepared for pretty much all the games we've seen over the last 6 weeks or so. That part of it is perhaps the hardest part to replicate.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. Anyway, have fun with your offense, Kentucky. I'm sure it's going to be not predictable.
Salty Dan. We could do a Salty Dan episode at some point
Listen,
soon.
I'm sure it'll be good. I'm sure they're going to win a ton of games at Kentucky, and the offense is going to be incredible. So, yeah.
Why don't we leave it at that, folks?
Yeah.
Dan, I'm sorry. It's a tough way to go down, but we've got a big one left. I know we're both excited to watch Indiana square off against Miami. Your final here on Friday evening in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. 56-22, Indiana wins in resounding fashion. Again, the only undefeated team still standing in college football. We will have 10 days to break down all that is to come in the final game of the college football season. As I mentioned, we've got a portal show. We've got a couple episodes between now and then. Hit follow, hit subscribe. If you made it this far, we'd love to have you along with us for the way.
Yes.
That guy over there, Dan. Myself, Ty. Dan, enjoy your evening. Get some sleep, all right?
I will try my best.
Do your best to stay solid.